Light rail being included in the new I-5 bridge plan has always been a sticky point, especially for many in Clark County. Last month, we told you about a snag in the light rail plan. Clark County's main public transit agency, C-Tran, came out in support of light rail 2 years ago, but only on the condition that they would not pay for any of the operations and maintenance costs. C-Tran's board of directors softened that stance in November, but then quickly seemed to regret it when they learned that their share of the bill would be around $6.8 million per year.
I'm just really shocked by this. I would prefer us concentrating on C-Tran and how to benefit C-Tran with how we could expand rapid bus system with us on our side. This to me kind of looks to be C-Tran subsidizing TriMet.
In January, the board started to consider whether to roll back its November decision, but ultimately pushed the vote to March, so that's still to come. In the meantime, however, one of C-Tran's member governments has already weighed in. Earlier this month, the Camas City Council took up a resolution to oppose light rail in the project altogether. But hold on, the train is going to Vancouver, not Camas. So why do they even care? Because to cover its share of the bill, C-Tran would likely have to increase the sales tax it uses to fund its operations. And the tax applies everywhere in C-Tran's service area, including Camas. Ahead of the vote on the resolution, the leader of the Interstate Bridge Project team warned the Camas Council that dropping light rail from the design would be difficult and costly, especially this far into development. You'll see him in the upper right-hand corner of the screen.
This took us approximately two and a half years to get to this. Now, I'm not saying it would take us another 2.5 years if we were to eliminate, but it would take significant time. Every day that we miss here in this year, out in 2035, that adds up to $1 million a day in escalation and inflation costs.
The council was not persuaded. The resolution opposing light rail passed unanimously. All right, no offense to Camas, but does it really matter? The light rail plan got unanimous support 2 years ago from the project's executive steering group, which includes Portland, Vancouver, and just about every regional government agency you can think of, but not the smaller cities. So not only is Camas outvoted on this, they don't really have a vote, but it is another knock on light rail's publicity. And one other factor to consider here is that light rail is not fully funded yet. The bridge replacement team is seeking $1 billion from the federal capital investment grant program for light rail. It's a multi-year application process. Now, we reached out to the team earlier this week to check if they feel they have to do anything in response to Camas's objections and to ask whether Camas's opposition could somehow harm the project's chances of landing that $1 billion grant. So far, they have not responded. But if we're talking about federal money, we can't ignore the murky federal funding landscape since President Donald Trump returned to the White House. The I-5 bridge project has already been awarded several other federal grants, including 2 that altogether are worth $2.1 billion. Just days into Trump's second term, his administration issued a memo that put a freeze on all federal assistance funding until the administration could root out funding going to things it does not like, described in the memo as DEI, woke gender ideology, and the Green New Deal. 22 states challenged the legality of the freeze, and a federal judge issued a temporary injunction to block it, although the states have alleged that the administration is not fully complying. In the meantime, Trump's Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy issued a similar memo directing his department to, quote, eliminate all Biden-era programs, policies, activities, rules, and orders that promote climate change activism, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, racial equity, gender identity, policies, environmental justice, and other partisan objectives. He followed that up by ordering all Department of Transportation programs, including capital investment grants, to give preference to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. Not exactly sure what that all has to do with bridge building, but so be it. So aside from some eyebrow-raising quotes in there, there are two critical questions here. First, does Trump's temporary funding freeze include transportation grants? And second, since the Duffy memos appear to be permanent rather than temporary, how strict are these new rules intended to be? Could they be applied retroactively to grants that are already in the application process or already awarded? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, that could be a major problem for the I-5 bridge project. Some of Trump and Duffy's forbidden words appear quite a lot in bridge replacement project documents, including whole technical reports devoted to equity and environmental justice. And as for birth and marriage rates, according to CDC data, Oregon and Washington are both below the national average. Oregon and Washington lawmakers certainly seem to think the president's funding freeze includes transportation grants, though not necessarily all of them. Senator Ron Wyden said in a news release last month that the freeze would threaten the I-5 bridge project. And Senator Jeff Merkley called Trump and Duffy's orders an illegal power grab and an attempt to control how Oregonians live their lives. Washington Senator Patty Murray said this last week.
What we're seeing now, the absolute lawlessness, the illegal funding freeze that is risking jobs and hurting working people, that simply cannot continue. The president is illegally blocking hundreds of billions in approved funding for our roads and bridges.
Murray later told us in a statement that the money from the two biggest grants does still appear to be flowing despite Trump's freeze. But she said a $30 million grant for a freeway cap in Vancouver is blocked, and she's worried that Trump could go after the capital investment program too. That's the $1 billion light rail grant that we're still in the process of applying for. Now, when it comes to what Transportation Secretary Duffy's memo could mean, things are even less clear. Speaking about both the Trump freeze and the Duffy memo, Oregon Senator Ron Wyden told us, as with most everything during this chaotic administration, answers from federal agencies under Donald Trump and Elon Musk to communities' most fundamental questions about congressionally approved spending commitments are either non-existent or change on a moment's notice. Senator Murray simply told us she will do everything she can to see the bridge project through. We asked the bridge team for their thoughts on this funding uncertainty, and again, they have not responded. Frankly, it's understandable to try and keep a low profile in the media when billions of grant funding could be at risk. For what it's worth, during the Camas City Council meeting earlier this month, the leader of the bridge team joined via Zoom instead of in person. Why?
I'm actually in Washington, D.C., hoping to continue to make the case for funding this project as we move forward.
So yeah, there's work underway to try and ensure this project doesn't go the way of the Columbia River Crossing program and crumble. But supposing things did go bad with the grants, what would happen next? We're speculating here, but if we had to guess, lawsuits. The court battle over Trump's funding freeze is just one of dozens of lawsuits that have been filed in response to his blitz of executive orders. Duffy himself has already become embroiled in one of them. He and Trump announced Wednesday morning they were canceling New York City's congestion pricing program, new tolls in Manhattan, and the city's Metropolitan Transportation Authority immediately sued them over it. So there are a lot of unknowns at play. Most importantly, the federal bridge money. And then whether or not CTRAN is going to slam the door again on light rail operations and maintenance funding, and if Camas's light rail opposition really means anything. But we would love to hear your thoughts on this latest I-5 bridge project drama. How do you see things playing out? Email us at thisstory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090.